I've been able to get consistent 4.0 GPA semesters as a student in the best university in my country and one of the best universities in the world. And I'm making this video to show you exactly how easy getting good grades is. And so if you watch this entire video, you're going to learn how to actually realistically get good grades for yourself. And so this whole video is just to show you how good grades are actually easy to get. And so what do you exactly need to do in order to get good grades? The first thing you need to do is study, right? You probably know that. But how do you need to study in order to get the grades that you want, right? Because you've probably already tried studying, but just the act of studying is probably not good enough to get good grades. You can get decent grades or you can get good grades, but they won't be consistent and they won't apply across different types of courses, right? Like if it might work for math or something for physics, but it's not going to work for every single subject. And so the thing is, in school or university, mostly you're just tested for your memory. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's just the way it is. Mostly it's for memory, right? And so that's what we need to optimize for. How do you exactly store the most amount of information and with the highest quality so that you're able to remember it, but also remember it with great detail when it comes to your examinations? And so the process in order to put stuff into your memory is just called encoding. And then when you have an exam or something, then the process is retrieval. I don't even know if I'm spelling that right, but yeah, I'm not, whatever. Either way, how do we optimize for encoding, right? And not just any type of encoding. You want it to be high quality encoding so that you not only remember the thing, but you also understand it, which inherently is gonna strengthen the quality of your memory, right? As in, you don't want to just remember that the powerhouse of the cell is the mitochondria or something, right? But you kind of want to know what the mitochondria looks like, the different components of it, what it does, how it applies to different cellular processes in the body, right? And so how exactly do you do that? It's just by, and the way you do that is just by learning through a lot of different mechanisms, right? And so the way to encode could be from reading your textbook, right? Or it could be from going to the lecture. Or another thing is taking lecture notes after. Or you could even go the extra step and watch videos, right? So if you were realistically to combine all of these and use all of these methods, then your encoding would just be a lot better because you're getting exposed to the same material, but from different perspectives with different types of information. Like this one person might say this thing about the mitochondria, but then your professor is going to say this one thing, right? And so they all complement each other, where it's like, oh, you're getting a deeper understanding, not just a broader, but also deeper understanding of the topic. And so how exactly do you optimize for these different tasks? So for the textbook, you can just do just a reading and that would help you, right? But if you were to upgrade that, that could be something with doing textbook notes, right? But if you were to upgrade that even more, then you could do active recall notes, where you use the method called SQ3R. And that's a method that I made a whole detailed video on. And it's also in my course, which is the first link in the description. And it basically teaches you exactly how to get good grades and be a productive student. But it is also on my channel and you can check out the video SQ3R, right? And so going from the level of just like reading the textbook, or for example, reading just the textbook chapter summary, right? Going from that to then doing active recall notes where you're testing your retrieval at the same time. Like you're testing your retrieval in order to encode more, right? And so that's going to be more effective than just, for example, reading the chapter summary, because that doesn't require enough thinking, and it's not going to like activate your brain to think that this information is important enough to remember. You need to realize that your brain doesn't store every single thing into your long-term memory, because like there's no point, there's no advantage to it to store every single thing, right? Unless you have a photographic memory, then your brain is just wired differently or something, right? But for most people, the average human, their brain is not going to store every single piece of information because there's no significance to it, right? You need to go through like a set of criteria in order to convince your brain to store this thing into memory. And so it could either be by doing endless hours of just repeating the same exact thing, or you can increase the effort when you are studying, and that would decrease the time needed, right? And the repetition needed to memorize that thing. And so by doing active recall, you're increasing the effort, but you're also decreasing the time. So let's say if memory had an equation, it'd be memory equals time x or times effort. And so theoretically, to get the same amount of memory, you could increase the effort, which would increase the time, because there's an inverse relationship. This could also apply to the lecture itself, right? Like going to the lecture could have different levels itself. As in, if you went to the lecture and sat at the back of the class versus the front of the class, then that would make a difference in your learning. If you were to just sit there and not engage versus ask questions and raise your hand, then that would also make a difference. If you were to sit beside friends who talk a lot versus friends who are actually locked in as well and they're trying to study, that would also make a difference. So there's different layers. Okay, and also, if you were to sit in the lecture and then write every single word the professor says versus writing a few notes, the ones that actually matter and the ones that are not already covered in the slides that the professor provides, then that would make a difference. Taking less notes but only on important things is going to make you remember those little things, but it would also be a better learning experience. Same thing with the lecture notes. As in, if I was to take the lecture notes a week after the lecture versus a day or the same day of the lecture, that would make a difference. If I was to use active recall versus passively looking at the slides and then writing down the notes without using any retrieval or any active recall, then that would also make a difference in my learning. And you can see how all these different tasks have multiple layers that could really influence your strength of the memory you have for that type of information. And then with the videos, you can even do the same thing where it's like you can watch passively or you can take notes. Or for example, you can go to like Khan Academy, who has a bunch of like practice questions that relate to every single video on their website. Or for example, the Organic Chemistry Tutor, which does examples with you, and so you can solve the same exact questions and then see if you got the right answer. And so that would all influence the type of memory that you have. It's not equal. It's definitely not equal. It's just because the more effort you put, the more you signal to your brain that this information is important. You're dedicating resources and like attention and effort, and you're getting like a whole headache from studying this because it's so difficult. And so your brain is going to cooperate with you to store this information into memory. And so that you're going to fill almost all the gaps needed for the exam, so that when you do have to do the active retrieval, there's not much knowledge gaps that will appear on your test, right? But if you don't use the aspect of retrieval, then you're not going to know the gaps in knowledge that you have. As in, like, if I was to do the SQ3R method, right, when I'm reading the textbook, there's going to be a good amount of information that I found out, oh, I did not remember this, or I did not understand this to the portion that maybe I wanted to or needed to for the exam. And so if I never did the active retrieval, then I was never going to know that. I was going to think that, oh yeah, it's good enough, right? Or for the lecture notes, right? If I was to like use active recall for that, and like, let's say, think about, oh, what did she talk about the what did she say about the mitochondria in the lecture? And let's say I remembered some things but not everything, and so I determined the knowledge gaps that I have had, then I'm gonna focus more on those gaps to like fill them out so that on test day I'm covered. But if I never did the retrieval, practicing retrieval before you officially have to do the retrieval in order to get the grades, then you would have never been able to fill those knowledge gaps. And so you need both. And yeah, you definitely need both in order to get the memory that you need. And so even though it does take some effort, some considerable effort, and even some days, like some actually really hard effort, right, in order to study properly and effectively, but now you actually know what you need to do, right? But now it's come to a point where you know what you need to do, and it's relatively very straightforward. Like, I've basically laid down everything you need to study in like a single page, right? And so getting good grades is pretty easy. It's just up to you to do the work, which most people won't do. But that's pretty much all I had to say in this video. And if you wanted to learn more on how to get a 4.0 GPA and how to become a productive student, then just check out my courses, the first link in the description, and I'll see you there.